In episode 327, we defined self-competition, the choosing self using the 4 signals to close the gap between the conditioned self and the preferred self. In the last episode, we calibrated self-competition. Choose one signal, hold it for a cycle while maintaining the others, and learn when not to compete at all. We stayed in the context of the gym and exercise. The gym makes the competition clear and visible. You can measure the gap in the resistance used, in sets, in seconds, in fidelity. The logbook is the scoreboard. The adversary is the body as it's been conditioned so far. But this doesn't just apply in the gym. The conditioned self follows you into every room, every conversation, every decision. The choosing self has the same finite attention at work, in relationships, in thought, as it does under the barbell. And the preferred self, your standard of personal excellence, is not limited to health and fitness. It's a life standard that the gym makes plain. Today, we turn our attention to where the competition is already happening. We're expanding our awareness. We'll refrain from taking action on what we notice for now. Awareness is step 1. Hey there, it's me, Core, and you're listening to Exercising Consistency, from fitness to flourishing. Outside the gym, the conditioned self is the same thing it is under the barbell. The sum of your past reinforcement, acting faster than conscious choice can intervene. It is not malicious. It is what has been trained so far. It's the automatic response, the learned habit, the emotional reflex that fires before you, the choosing self, have time to evaluate. The difference is structural. In the gym, the competition is designed. The set is defined. The rest period is measured. The standard is set before the work begins. Outside the gym, the competition is constant and unannounced. The adversary acts in the space between stimulus and response, a space measured in milliseconds, and you must decide whether to intervene after the reaction has already begun. This is not a metaphor. The conditioned self operates through the same neural pathways outside the gym as inside it. The basal ganglia run the habits. The amygdala fires the emotional responses. The prefrontal cortex, your conscious thinking hardware, is the last to arrive and the first to fatigue. The asymmetry is not a training limitation. It is the architecture of being human. The competition outside the gym is not fair. It never was. The adversary is faster. You must be more deliberate. And the scoreboard, the logbook, is absent. No one is recording whether you intervened. The only evidence is the life you are building or the life you are accepting. Every moment where the conditioned self acts before you intervene is a competition. The gap between what was done and what the preferred self would have done is the score. You are the only person keeping it. For example, the argument you are already losing. Your partner says something that lands wrong. The conditioned self fires a response before you have processed what was said. The tone is sharper than the circumstances warrant. The words are what you always say in this situation, practiced, automatic, and not what the preferred self would have chosen. You, the deliberate, choosing self, arrive late. The conversation has already moved. The gap between the conditioned self's response and the preferred self's standard is the competition. You lost that round. The question is whether you notice. Or how about the task you avoid without deciding to? The work is in front of you. The conditioned self opens a different tab, picks up the phone, finds something else to do. There was no decision. There was an impulse and an action, and the space between them was too small for you to enter. The preferred self would have begun the work. The conditioned self defaulted to avoidance. The gap is measured in the work that did not start, or the habit that runs the morning. You wake up, the conditioned self reaches for the phone and scrolls. The first hour of the day is directed by whatever the algorithm serves. There was no conscious choice made. The conditioned self ran the routine that was practiced over and over. You were not present. The preferred self had a different morning, one that began with intention, not with scrolling. The gap is measured in the hours that belong to the adversary because no one challenged them. These are competitions you did not know you were in. The adversary won by default because it was faster, and you had not considered the consequences of what you were allowing to take place. You didn't realize you were competing until the routine had been mastered. The most impactful place the competition appears is in the identity that accumulates across these moments. Practice makes permanent. What you repeat becomes who you are. The conditioned self does not need motivation or intention to practice. It practices automatically. Every time it fires the same response, it reinforces the same pattern. Every time you don't intervene, you consent to the conditioning. The competition of identity is not a one-time decision. It's a contest held in every moment of choice, across every domain, for the duration of a life. The conditioned self wants to keep being what it has been and doing what it has done. The preferred self demands something more. You decide which one wins today, but the decision is not made in a single moment of clarity. It's made or unmade in the accumulation of moments where you either intervened or you did not. This is the arc of transformation in daily life. The conversation where you paused before responding. The impulse you noticed and did not follow. The habit you interrupted and replaced. Each intervention is an action you've chosen that trains the conditioned self toward the preferred self. Each non-intervention is a missed opportunity that leaves the conditioned self as it was. The arc never ends. The preferred self rises as your skill improves. What you consider possible for your own excellence evolves. The competition has no finish line. It is a direction. Every domain is different, but the structure of the competition is the same. The conditioned self is faster. It acts before you can intervene. Making a conscious, deliberate choice is effortful. It requires attention, and attention is finite. The preferred self is the standard. It defines what excellence looks like. And the gap is always measurable if you define the standard before the moment begins. The person who loses the competition in daily life is the person who never recognized that the competition had already begun. The conditioned self was already being trained. Their repertoire of skills and responses was already accumulating. You did not intervene because you did not know your choices were relevant. Recognition precedes intervention. You cannot compete against an adversary you have never identified. You cannot close a gap you have never measured. You cannot train a conditioned self you do not know you have the power to train. Now you're beginning to recognize what's happening. However, recognition without application is observation without change. Knowing that the conditioned self follows you everywhere does not tell you how to compete against it in domains where there is no bar, no clock, no logbook. In the next episode, we close the entire series. We look at how to apply self-competition in daily life, which domains to choose, which standards to set, and what happens to your experience of a life when you stop accepting the triggered reactions the conditioned self supplies and begin demanding the standard the preferred self requires. Until then, watch for one moment today where the conditioned self acted before you could choose. A reply you gave automatically. An impulse you followed without examining. A habit that ran without your consent. Don't judge yourself harshly. Just identify it. You, the choosing self, must recognize your adversary in order to train well. To exercise consistency and become the person who uses self-competition to train well for every part of your life, join the Act Score Challenge. That's it for today. Catch you next time.